You're listening to the Personal Profitability Podcast, where you'll learn how to earn income, live better, and put your money to work for you. Here's your guide on your path to personal profitability, Eric Rosenberg.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the Personal Profitability Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Eric Rosenberg, and I'm thrilled today to have a special guest with us who knows a heck of a lot about budgeting, something I've been writing about a bit on the blog lately. I've talked a lot about how to make more and earn more on the side over the last few months, and this guest knows quite a bit about that as well. But this week, we just posted my big, super epic post on everything budgeting, and I want to keep that topic going and keep the discussion going on that. So today, I have a guest, Deacon Hayes. He's someone I know through the FinCon community, who I'm actually going to see get to high five in person in a few weeks. Today, we can only digital high five. But Deacon is here with us, and he runs a site called Well Kept Wallet, which we'll talk all about in a few minutes. So say hello, Deacon, to the many listeners.
Hello, many listeners.
So Deacon is in the Phoenix area. That's right?
That is correct. Yeah.
Cool. So how did you get started in the personal finance world?
Well, it's kind of hot in Arizona, so you got to find things to do indoors. And no, just kidding. Yeah, it's funny. I was actually a wood flooring salesman. And when my wife and I got married, we decided to combine our finances. And at that point, we realized we had $52,000 in consumer debt outside of mortgages. And so at that point, I just started researching, better money habits, because we had really bad money habits. And so, and then we decided through that process, let's set a goal. We want to pay off our debt in 18 months. And so we really just kind of put together this plan, and I created this website, Well Kept Wallet, to kind of track our journey and kind of be an encouragement to people as we were paying off our debt.
Well, so speaking of it being hot in Phoenix, two things. First, my mom went to school. She went to college in the Phoenix area. She went to Arizona State. Whoop, whoop. Is it true that she told me that people's windows would blow up because it's so hot from the pressure in the summer? Is that you ever see that happen?
In the 21st century, I don't think that's happened, but possibly in the 20th century, it was possible.
Yes, it was like, wow, it's crazy. She was there. I won't say how long ago, but she was there. She was there a couple of years ago, and said that people would come out to their cars on a really hot day after class or after work, and it was like 197 degrees or whatever it gets to be out there, and they would get out to their car, and the windows would have blown out if they hadn't cracked them. So, funny thing. But also, speaking of hot, we want to keep it cool. I always say personal finance should be fun, and you should let loose a little. So Deacon and I are having a virtual beer together. We're actually having real beers, but virtually toasting them. I am having I have a lot of Oregon beers living in Portland, but I'm going to my old home state, Colorado. I'm having a new Belgium Slow Ride Session IPA. I like it because it's got all those good hoppy IPA flavors, but a session beer, for those who don't know, is a lot lower alcohol content, which I know some people say, oh, where's the fun in that? But hey, I'm recording a podcast. I have to keep on the up and up, right? So that's what I'm having. How about you, Deacon? What are you drinking?
I'm just going with the good old standard Blue Moon, Belgian white, Belgian style wheat ale. That's kind of my go-to.
I actually have that's actually also a beer with Colorado roots. New Belgium is from Fort Collins. It's one of the bigger craft breweries from the state, but the Blue Moon Brewing Company was actually founded inside of Coors Field, where the Rockies play, the baseball team.
No kidding.
It ended up being bought by Coors, and that's why it's so big and you can find it everywhere. But the original recipe is the same original recipe. And if you're ever in Denver and you are downtown when it's baseball season, you can go to the Blue Moon Brewing Company. It's still there, and get a Blue Moon where they made them. So it's kind of a fun little tidbit about your beer.
Well, I will put that on my bucket list, man. Thanks for the heads up.
Oh, for sure. So we're talking about budgeting. And you said you paid off $52,000 in consumer debt. I'm guessing that's mostly credit card type debt. Is that right?
Credit card, student loans we put into that consumer debt area, okay. And also a car loan. Okay, so
those are all things that a lot of people have had to deal with. And when you're dealing with debt, or any real personal finance situation, there's kind of the two sides, the input and the output. The input being how much you earn, the output being the budget. So when you decided to start tackling this debt, where was your first focus?
The first thing that I focused on was creating what I called a financial game plan. And it was kind of, I really didn't know a lot about personal finance. So I actually put my net worth statement on my budget, and I called that a financial game plan. So I wanted to have one piece of paper that I could look at with my wife and say, hey, where are we at this month? Not just with our income and our expenses, but with our debt and, our assets, because that really was important to us, because it was motivating every time we saw that our debt was increasing and our debt was decreasing and our net worth was increasing. So I created that form, and, we'd actually go over it every week and talk about it. And one of the first things that we did was go line by line on the expense side and say, do we need this? And if we do, how can we make that smaller? And so I think that focused part of going on every line of the budget and either eliminating it or making it smaller was huge for us.
Were there any specific big wins that jumped out that early on you were like, done with this, just marking it out with the black pen or the red pen or whatever pen?
Yeah, well, cable was the first thing that went. And it was one of those things where, and I don't even think we had Netflix at the time. It was just, we could have basic TV, not have to have cable, and that was free. And, we were newlyweds, so we could go out and, do stuff and, hang out with family and that kind of stuff. So really cutting the cable. Also a gym membership. I don't know about you, but back then I wasn't really active in a gym. I have a gym membership now, but that was one of the things where I said, hey, you know what? I can go run outside. I can find other ways to be physically active, go hike Camelback Mountain, which is a mountain that's pretty well known in Arizona. And so, we got rid of those type of things. And the big thing was actually the car. When I looked at that and I thought, okay, the car payment was like $360 a month. Plus, on top of that, my insurance cost significantly more because it was a brand new vehicle. And plus, on top of that, the registration cost even more. So I just thought, man, if I could just get rid of that car, that would be probably about $400 a month in savings, which is almost $5,000 a year, And for us, for being newlyweds, we're like $5,000 a year. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So, we're on a journey to figure out how do we get rid of the car, even though it was upside down. So that was kind of one of the big things that we actually ended up getting rid of and coming up with the difference that freed up that extra $400 a month.
Hey, that's if we add up that cash flow from just those few changes, $400 a month from the car, was what, $100 a month from the cable? Let's say 100 just to make it easy rounding. In the gym membership, or I guess if we add that to it, it's like $500 a month you came up with right away that you were able to save. So that's a big lesson to a lot of people, I think. I cut cable myself. I cut it. I have to think back a few years. I was still single, living on my own, but I thought, I'm spending $70 a month giving the money to Comcast. And, I did watch TV, but how much did I really watch it that I needed it? And I already did have Netflix. I actually found one of the coolest things for me when I cut cable wasn't just saving $70 a month, though. That's a lot of money that I definitely enjoy having. One part of it I really enjoyed was I actually went out and did stuff like you were talking about, going and hanging out with friends and family. Like I went out to sort of into happy hours, which, there's a little bit of a cost, but less than $70 a month, and was spending time with real people instead of staring at a screen. So that was a huge life benefit in addition to the financial benefit. So after you started all that budgeting, how long did it take you to pay off that debt? And were there any other moves you made along the way that were really helpful?
Yeah, so it took us 18 months. And, that wasn't like a magical number. I had read somewhere that the average person who kind of puts together a plan to get out of debt, got out of debt within 18 to 24 months. And I was like, okay, well, I feel like not that I'm above average, but like if someone can do it in 18 months, like we can do it in 18 months. So let's just figure it out, And so, let's just say we sell the car, we got an extra $500 on top of what we were paying already. We've eliminated a few debts at that point in time. So the car was like $17,000. So let's just say we went from 52 to 50, and then we sold the car, and then now we're down in the 30s, right? We're at like $33,000. And so now we went from 52 to 33, and we're feeling that momentum. And so, we're selling stuff on Craigslist, selling stuff on eBay, just finding stuff that was in closets and drawers and cabinets and just sitting there collecting dust. And we're like, do we, like, kind of like with the budget, do we really need this? Right. And so we sold a lot of stuff. And on top of that, anytime we got a windfall, right? Like, so we got tax returns. all that money went to go pay down debt. So it was like anytime extra money came in, we had a purpose and a plan, which was to pay off our debt. And so that really allowed us to get that momentum and paid off in 18 months.
So when you paid, did you target one specific loan or credit card first, or did you try to spread the wealth and pay them all down together?
So we targeted one at a time, and we used the debt snowball method. And, we found that to be really effective for us because we realized that our debt was, a psychological problem, that we bought stuff that we couldn't afford, and it was immediate gratification. And so we needed to, use a method that was less mathematical and more psychological, like the debt snowball. And so that was really helpful for us.
So can you walk people through, for people who don't know what the debt snowball is, can you walk people through what your logic process was and what order you paid things off?
Sure. Yeah. So the debt snowball is where you list your debts on a piece of paper from smallest debt to largest debt, regardless of the interest rate. And so, I think we had maybe some small credit cards, maybe 300, maybe 600, things like that. So those were at the top. And so the idea was you took all of your extra money, if we sold something on Craigslist or eBay, we take that extra money, pay off a debt. Well, the beauty is using the debt snowball, we paid off our first debt probably within our first 30 days. So we saw progress early on to where we had like this confidence, like, hey, this is working. We can do this. Where, there's another method that's called a debt avalanche, where you pay off the highest interest rate first. Well, if that's a larger debt, and you feel like you're spinning your wheels, you're not making progress, it's easy to give up. So the beauty of the debt snowball is that it builds momentum and confidence so that you feel like you're actually getting somewhere. And so it was funny because every time we paid off a debt, it was almost like a game. Like I had this visual on our fridge, and it was an Excel spreadsheet, like a chart. And it said, let's say October, 52,000, November, 51,000, and so it literally, we could see our debt melt away on our fridge. So it was kind of like this game, right? Like we gamified it. And so, using the debt snowball, focusing with every extra dollar, paying off the smallest debt, just really was huge for us.
That's great. I'm a huge fan of either debt snowball or avalanche. I think, if you go through the financial calculations, the paying off high interest debt first will make the most financial sense. But as you point out, the psychological part is huge, and feeling like you have a win can mean a lot more than the $20 you save in interest. So if you are paying off any kind of big number of debt across multiple accounts, really think about what way is going to work best for you. Because there's personal finance is personal. There's never any right or wrong answer. It's what works for you. And, Deacon and his wife definitely found a way that worked for them. So that's awesome. I applaud you. Great job.
Thanks.
So on the other side of the coin, we've talked about budgeting. Have you taken any steps to try to, or while you were paying off the debt, you talked about selling your junk on, or not junk necessarily, stuff that you didn't use or need anymore on eBay and Craigslist. Did you do anything else to try to bring more money in the door while you were paying down your debt?
Yeah. So one thing that I ended up doing was getting a second job delivering pizzas. And so I remember when I was in college, I delivered pizzas on the weekends and at night. And I knew that it was something that I could work just 2-3 days a week. And it paid good money. I think I probably averaged, $15 an hour for a part-time job, which, at that time was a decent side income, and, a couple weeks worth of paychecks or tips would pay off one of our debts, right? So that definitely gave us a little bit of help as well.
Oh, that's great. So if you were going to face this problem again, or talking to someone who's facing this problem, they have a bunch of debt, they feel overwhelmed, they don't know what to do, they have a full-time job and they're getting by, but definitely not making any big progress in their debt. What advice would you have to give them now that you've done it, that you didn't know in the beginning, that could help them pay it off?
The funny thing is, it sounds so simple, but really putting together a budget or tracking your expenditures, right? It's funny. I've lost weight before. And the thing that was key for me was to track my calorie intake. And so it's the same thing with finances. If you want to be able to figure out a financial goal and how you're going to get there, you have to track, your spending and your income. And so that was the first thing. And then once you do that, it's almost like this aha moment, like, oh my gosh, like I know why I can't get ahead or why I'm not paying off my debt. It's because I eat out too much, or I buy too much in groceries, or I do too much, when it comes to entertainment, or I have, too much unnecessary debt, like a car loan or whatever it might be. And so really, putting together that budget, analyzing it, saying, okay, how can I make this smaller? How can I make my financial picture better? And then creating a plan to, increase your income and decrease your expenses, whatever way that's, works best for you. Maybe you can't deliver pizzas at night, but maybe you can deliver, papers in the morning, right? Or maybe you can do something online. There's a lot of online opportunities where you can make money from the comfort of your home. So really just kind of mapping out that plan. And that's it. I mean, really, if you've got a goal, right? Your goal is to pay off X amount of debt. Now it's just an equation, increasing your income, decreasing your expenses. And the more you do of both of those, the sooner you're going to pay off your debt.
Oh, that's great. So when you were paying off your debt, when I started paying off my old student loans, that was my big debt payoff I did. I used mint.com. Now I use Personal Capital more myself as a budgeting tool. Did you use any software budgeting tools? Did you go with the old school pen and paper? How did you track your budget and put it together in the beginning?
So in the beginning, we did it in an Excel spreadsheet. And, I really liked that because I had full control over where everything was categorized and how the format was. Because like I said, I wanted to see on one piece of paper, two numbers, if we had a deficit or a surplus. So if we were in the black or if we were in the red. And then if our net worth was increasing, those were the two things I wanted to see on a regular basis. So, the Excel spreadsheet allowed me to do that. Today, we fast forwarded, we use mint.com. But we take the information from mint.com and we put it in our spreadsheet. So we get to see it the way that we want to see it, but Mint will help us in the categorizing and organizing and kind of get us 80% of the way there. So we use a combination of both.
That's great. Actually, I've never heard someone doing that, though. I've seen the export features. I always wondered what I would use it for. That's a great way to do it. I know people who are very manual with their budgets and it works great for them. But for me, I know I wouldn't do it. It just takes so much work and time. And with all these great free tools out there that'll categorize your spending, it's like, it seems like a no-brainer. You can use the time that you save to, go make $20 doing whatever it is that you're good at. So that's how I do it. So here's another question, something that is more of a conversation topic. So I've talked a bit on the blog lately about the differences between budgeting at a very, very detailed level and kind of a mid-level, like where you say a detailed level would be budgeting for restaurants and fast food and groceries, as an example. A mid-level would be saying just a food budget line where all those are rolled into one. Then you could also, if you are really on top of your spending, maybe even just do a high-level spending goal, as long as you're tracking towards that. Is there one of those that you think works best for you or for most people? I guess that's two questions.
Yeah. So I'm a fan of making it simple. I think the more that you have to, the more complex it is, the less likely someone is to do it, right? So, for us, it was really simplifying it. And in fact, for the longest time, we put eating out in the entertainment category, because we just felt like that was one of the things that we did for entertainment is we went out to restaurants, and then every once in a while we go to movies and things like that. But so we just had that category, combined them to make it simple. We have since kind of because we've been doing it for a while, for a number of years, we've kind of expanded. So now we kind of have like a fast food / eating out budget. So, it really is what works best for people. But I really encourage you, if you're listening to this, to make it simple, something that's doable, something that works for you. And then if, once you get comfortable with it, maybe you can expand from there.
It's funny. For me, I actually ended up doing the opposite. When I started with budgeting in the beginning, I was so inspired to knock out my debt. I had my grad school's estimated cost was about $90,000, and the student loans I left with was somewhere around $40,000. So that was my my big chunk of change I wanted to pay off before as quick as I could. And I was so inspired. I was like, I'm going to budget every single dollar and every single line. So I had every possible breakout almost that I could, I had a budget for. And over time, I've lumped things together more and more and made it more simple, especially now that I don't have the big debt anymore. I feel like I don't have to put the time in that I did before, as long as I know my spending is still under control. Though I know, for some people, the opposite's the case. So it's really it's been a find what works right for me. And especially now, we're both married, before when I was paying off my debt, I was a single guy. Now I'm married. So I have another person to put in the equation with our budgeting. So it's just, it's always something I find interesting to see what works best for different people and finding your own way. So that's, do you have any more thoughts on that topic of how to do that? how to best categorize?
Well, but I think, you also brought up another point that I think is key. Having your spouse on the same page, right? I mean, that we wouldn't have been able to pay off our debt in such a short period of time if it wasn't for us both being on the same page and then coming up with a budgeting system that worked for both of us. And so I love what you said because it's so true. I mean, earlier you said personal finance is personal. And so, some people are a little bit more detail oriented and they got to track every penny. And some people are a little bit more, hey, I just need to be to the closest dollar or closest $5 and we'll be okay. We'll still achieve our goals. So, for us, it was really kind of figuring out more the girl and guy categories is what I kind of label them as. So girl category would be, makeup, clothes, and I'm not talking about clothes that you need to buy. You're buying clothes just because you want them.
Accessorizing.
Yeah. So, that's the girl stuff. And then guys is I like technology and some guys like sports and, buying tickets to concerts or whatever it might be. So we actually set a budget for girl and guy categories. That was, I think, the best thing ever because that eliminated the fighting about money because my wife could buy whatever she wanted within those boundaries and I could buy whatever I wanted within those boundaries. And so that really helped us in that process because the hardest part is people are going to say, gosh, I'd love to do this, but I don't want to fight with my spouse about money. So they avoid it like the plague because they don't want to get in those situations. Well, that was one of the key things. It's just making sure that we each had a category. We had some blow money, some girl and guy money to spend.
Yeah, good communication on all this stuff I found is so important. And when you're dealing with your personal finances by yourself, if you make a mistake, you're only accountable to yourself unless you have a blog, in which case you're accountable to your readers as well. Because that's something that I always said I would do is hold myself accountable for everybody. But when you have a spouse, that's someone that you're not just making a mistake with your money; it's their money too. And whether I'm on the opinion that every dollar earned is a shared dollar, whether I earn it or my wife earns it. And every dollar spent, I feel the same way. If I go out and blow a bunch of money on, gambling in Vegas, that's not something I have ever done. I mean, I've gone to Vegas and blown money, but not gambling. It's something I would feel terrible about, but I know some people don't have that. So having that really good communication, giving yourself freedom within a certain bound, I think is very important when dealing with money as a couple. So in your guy category, would you mind sharing some of your vices, any big purchases you made that you were super excited about?
I'd say at the time it was probably like a PlayStation 3 or something like that, and it's funny because I always thought growing up that video games were for kids. And then I met my father-in-law who is now 71 years old and he has an Xbox 360, and so it was one of those things where it was like, oh, you can have these kind of fun things that you do every once in a while as long as you buy them within your budget, right? Another thing that we like to do, and this not necessarily guy, but we like to travel. So, we created a travel category, and I've used some of my guy money kind of separate from that. Like if we go and we travel somewhere, like we've been to, Paris and London and Hong Kong and Singapore. I said Hong Kong and Singapore.
Did you play ping pong in Hong Kong?
That would have been sweet, but no, they would have whooped me, man. Those guys are fast over there.
I watched, speaking of Netflix, there was a Netflix movie. It was really, really bad. I watched lately about a guy, it was called Ping Pong Playa or something. It It's a way to not waste 2 hours, but it was funny-ish.
Hey, you know what? If I got 2 hours to waste, I'll check it out.
If you want to just totally zone out, that's Chinese guy playing ping pong. He's really good.
Yeah, and and so sometimes we travel to some of these places, and if I wanted something, I just use my guy money to buy it and not have to worry about it. So, it really just kind of depends on the person. Nowadays, like I bought a smartwatch, a Moto 360, because I'm an Android guy, and I was really disappointed. I mean, like I had that awe factor, like, oh my gosh, this is exciting! Like I can do stuff from my hand instead of pulling my phone out of my pocket. But after like a month of using it, I just didn't use it as much. And so now I'm reselling it on Amazon. But, those are just some of the things that I spend my guy money on.
I've had some similar kinds of purchases. I was really excited. Have you heard of Automatic? It's a smart thing you put in your car that feeds your car data to your phone.
No, I was thinking of the company that owns WordPress, but no, tell me more about this.
That's Automatic with 2 T's. It's Automatic with 1 T. So it's a device. It costs $100. It's a little gray thing. You know that there's a computer port. Every car since like 1982 or 84, somewhere in the 80s, I think, has one. It's US or foreign made. It's called an ODB2 port. And you can plug this thing into your ODB2 port. That's the place that your mechanics, when they say, we have to plug into your car's computer, that's how they do it. And it talks to your phone and tells you all this stuff about your car. And I was so excited about it. And after like 4 days, I was like, oh, so it just tells me this stuff about my car. And it was the same thing. It cost $100. At least I was able to write a blog post about it and write it off as a business expense. So, but I've had those two kind of as fun purchases. My big one right now, where I definitely had to have a serious budget talk with my wife about. I just started private pilot lessons. Actually have my third one coming up this week. So those are very expensive and something, if I were in debt, I would definitely not be able to do this. I'm happy to be at a point where I'm no longer able to. But that was a serious conversation going into something that will cost thousands of dollars that I get the primary benefit and my wife does not. So that was definitely a conversation that had to be had over time. It was not like one day I walked up to her and said, oh, I think I'm going to start learning how to fly a plane tomorrow. That was a big one. Any big purchase, I think, is important. So when you have a big purchase coming up that you're planning on, whether it's a guy money purchase or a shared purchase, do you have any budgeting techniques that you use to save up or plan for that?
So I use what I call a countdown fund, where, there is there's an end goal, and that end goal is X amount of dollars, right? And so, for instance, my wife wanted a MacBook Pro. And Macs are expensive. I'm a PC guy because I'm a personal finance blogger. I don't know about what you are, but
I've had both.
So she wanted a MacBook Pro, and I was just like, we can't really afford that right now. And so really, she just put away I think it was like $100 a month for 15 months. And then she bought a MacBook Pro, and it's like one of those things, like you think, oh, that's a big expense. And, if you just put together a plan and say, hey, I'm going to put away this much money a month until I've got the entire amount. So the reason why I call it a countdown fund is, you starting with your goal is $1,500 and you put $100 away. Now you got $1,400 left, $1,300, $1,200 until you have zero left to save and you have the amount that you need. And so really that's the method that we use so that we live within kind of our budget and our boundaries.
That's actually exactly. I have in the closet behind me, I have DJ equipment, and I have been a nightclub DJ in the past. And that's when I wanted to start being a DJ, I was looking into it. I actually, all the way back into high school, thought about being a DJ, and I was like, that stuff costs so much money. How would I ever afford that? And as I was paying my debt off, I don't think it's possible. I guess it's possible to be so laser focused on debt you don't do anything fun while you're doing it, but I don't know if that's sustainable for most people. One thing that I really wanted then was to get a DJ mixer, and the one I wanted was with the speakers and all. It was going to be about $2,000. I did that exact same thing. I budgeted about $200 a month, and I saved it and saved it and saved it. And after a little less than a year, I was rocking like Tiesto in my living room. That's how, if you can picture me, like boom, 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 boom.
I'm picturing it right now, man. I'm picturing it right now.
It's all fun. So when you and your wife, have you ever had any of those big purchases and you didn't want to save the countdown fund and you just gave in and did it?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I'm trying to knock you off the rails a little bit on your perfect finance record.
I know. Well, I mean, we obviously didn't for like the first 25 years of our lives, so we didn't have a perfect one. But we've had a perfect one for the past like 7 years. So, no, I'm just kidding. It's funny. So we bought a house at the end of last year, and thanks. And one of the things I was thinking, I was like, let's put 10% down, and then that way we'll just have more cash on hand if something happens, and we'll have a bigger emergency fund. And and I'm really more of the mindset of people really should put 20% down and avoid the PMI, and have a lower expense. Your mortgage is lower because you're putting more down, and you don't have the PMI. And so I was at a crossroads, and a buddy of mine who's completely debt free in his 30s, he's like, Deacon, put 20% down. And kind of was like my voice of reason in my ear, right? And so I was about to make like this, decision, and I ended up putting 20% down, and so we don't have the PMI, and our mortgage is only $985. And so, if we ever get another recession or my income goes down because I am, self-employed and my income is variable, we're in a better position because we did that. And so, I think even being a personal finance, blogger / expert, I still face those decisions and struggle with them just like, everybody else does. And I'm just blessed because I'm around a lot of guys like you, Eric, and my other buddy who kind of whisper in my ear and say, this is what you're telling your audience. Like you were talking about being accountable, being a blogger. I should practice what I preach, right?
I have, I don't know if you know Jeff Fruworth from Sustainable Life Blog. He's been on this podcast a couple times so far, and he's my buddy. That's my voice of reason. If I'm about to make a stupid financial decision, I usually know it. I think most people realize when they're about to make a bad decision, you get a little bit of a feeling. So whenever I have a little bit of a feeling on a financial decision, even if, even after I talk it out with my wife, I might still send him an IM and say, hey, Jeff, I'm about to do this. And, He'll tell me straight up if it's a dumb idea or not. So it's nice to have an accountability buddy or whatever you'd like to call them. Someone you can, I know a lot of people, we're being pretty open with our finances. A lot of people are very private with them, but I still think it's good to have at least one person you can talk to that's not a parent or a relative, someone who isn't invested in it and can really look at it objectively and tell you, oh yeah, you're making a smart choice, or oh no, not such a good choice. And ideally that's someone who also has some finance knowledge and has done well and made good decisions, someone you can look up to or at least look to as an equal. You don't want to ask somebody who has $100,000 in credit card debt for financial advice, or at least I wouldn't want to. It's great having that accountability partner there. So when we bought our house, we were faced with a similar decision. Living in Portland, the real estate market here is absolutely nuts. If there was one house that we really liked that came on the market, and within 24 hours before we even had time to put an offer down, there were already 4. So when we saw something we liked, we knew we had to come up with a strong offer and a lot of cash. We actually ended up putting down 40%, which every dollar more you put into your down payment lowers your mortgage payment. So that's something to keep in mind. And as Deacon was just saying, having a mortgage payment under $1,000 a month gives you a lot more flexibilities and freedoms. And he also mentioned PMI. For those who don't know, that's called private mortgage insurance. And that's a monthly cost on top of your mortgage payment you make every month if your equity in your home is less than 20%. That's something banks as a standard charge you. So, good choice on the on making the 20% down payment. I agree with you and your friend.
Well, thanks, man.
Yeah. So now you mentioned you're self-employed. What can you tell people how you went from delivering pizzas on the side to now working for yourself and running your own business?
So, yeah, I never realized that you could make money with a blog. I knew that you could make money with like Facebook, or if I came up with Twitter as an idea or something like that. But yeah, so I had
inventing Facebook, not using Facebook.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, some people use Facebook, but we won't go there.
It's another discussion for another day.
Yeah. So so I realized that, I had an audience, I had natural organic traffic coming from Google, and, I started coming across other bloggers that were making money. And I'm like, gosh, how do they do that? And so, just reading, whether it's their income reports or maybe them talking about, an affiliate that they have. And I decided to, research affiliates that I thought would be really good for my audience and that would line up with my values. Like I don't want to be selling. I'm the get out of debt guy, so I don't want to be selling title loans or payday loans or even credit cards for the most part. Like I kind of steer away from those. I don't think they're bad. That's just not something that I partner up with. So I found all these types of affiliates like Personal Capital that you mentioned earlier, Mint.com at the beginning, Ally Bank a long time ago. I mean, there's just a bunch of them. Now I do Everbank, and they pay me a small commission every time someone signs up for the services. So it's like a win-win. Like I'll talk to someone, I'll say, hey, you need a place to park your emergency fund. You should check out Everbank. They're paying 1.2%, whatever, for the first 6 months. And then after that, it's like 1%. And they're like, oh, that's great. And so it was kind of a win-win deal. And then obviously, as you're probably aware, I've toyed with AdSense and media.net ads and those kind of things, but they don't really pay a lot, but a couple $100 a month here and there. So that, and then I started doing an online course in coaching. So I do Skype calls and I do in-person deals. And so really kind of over the years, just developed all these different ways of getting income. So I'm not just dependent on one thing. I have multiple different streams of income that kind of provide for our needs.
Oh, that's great. That's the thing I think even people with full-time jobs need to keep in mind, having multiple income sources. It was actually just about 13 months ago from maybe today, the day we're recording or the day this goes live, somewhere in that week. Whenever you hear this, just think it's about a year ago. I was let go from a job very unexpectedly. It was a Friday. I went in one day and then they said that it was my last day. And a lot of people would totally freak out in that situation. But because of, I have a business similar to Deacon with my online business through my blog, and I also freelance, write and web design on top of that. And having that to fall back on, I knew, I might not be bringing in as much as I was before, but I can at least scrape by on the bare minimum, cover the rent. I'm not going to go hungry. And we also have plenty of savings. I think having a good emergency fund in one of those banks, like you were mentioning, with a good interest rate is a good way to go. So everyone definitely remember to have multiple income streams just in case, because you never know. If it happened to me, it could happen to anybody. And it's not a fun experience, especially if you have to go home and figure out how you're going to pay the rent next week. So, yeah.
It's funny you say that because I somewhat got fired from my last job as a financial planner. What happened was my boss, or no, not my boss, didn't do nothing at first. At first, I got an email from this producer in New York City for Fox News, and he said, "Hey, Deacon, we'd love for you and your wife to be on the show." And I was like, are you serious? Like, you want me to be on? They're like, yeah, talk about how you guys paid off your debt and that kind of stuff. So I as a financial planner, we're regulated by the SEC, which is, a federal agency. And because of that, I represent the company. And if I'm on the news, and if they were to mention that I worked at this company, my compliance department would have to kind of vet what I say. And so I go to my boss and I tell him, hey, I've got this really cool opportunity. What do you think? And they're like, oh, that's really exciting. Let me talk to the corporate office. Well, as soon as they did that, it was like a total change of tone. It was like, well, why are you going to be on TV? Oh, paid off this debt. And I've got this site where I've kind of, documented our journey and kind of helping other people. And they're like, well, your site has ads on it and you're giving financial advice. So you're basically getting paid for giving financial advice is kind of what it came down to. And I was like, well, but I submitted my blog for approval through the compliance department and they did it. And so it was this long drawn out thing. And they're like, well, Deacon, where do you want to be, in the next 10 years? And I was like, really, honestly, like, I'd rather be helping average people with their finances. And at that firm, I was working with high net worth individuals and I was just not fulfilling. I felt like I just wasn't meant to be there. And so they gave me a severance. So, technically fired me, but I kind of told them that's what I'd rather do. And so they're like, well, we'll help you do that. And so kind of like you, like, so here I am, like I have a job one day and then the next day I don't. And I had some income coming in on the side. I built up that emergency fund, but I wasn't 100% sure like how everything was going to shake out. And now I make about 4 times what I made as a financial planner, which is unbelievable. And I never would have imagined that, but I had to take that leap. But like you said, I mean, we did a lot of planning in the process, right? We paid off our consumer debt first. We had actually like 9 months worth of emergency fund, and I had income coming in from my blog and my side business already. So it wasn't like I just quit my job and didn't have any plan. It was coming, but I kind of was forced into it quickly.
Yeah, it was a very funny situation when I lost my job. Unexpectedly, I was kind of grinning as I walked out to the car after the shock wore off and I got my stuff. I was thinking, wow, I can work full time for myself. And I think it was 2 hours after I got home, told my wife, called my parents, told the people who I wanted to know that my employment situation changed. And about 2 hours later, I got a LinkedIn message from a recruiter. And it was a month later, I think to the day, I started my new job, and I've actually been there a year now. So I did go back to full-time employment and still do all my my online income stuff on the side. And I would never want to give up my side income. I think it's such I've learned the lesson. You need to have something to fall back on just in case. So so thank you so much, Deacon, for being here, sharing your story. It is definitely an inspiration to see how you paid off debt and went to now, working for yourself, buying a house, putting 20% down, doing the right things. If people want to connect with you, learn more about you, give you a virtual shout out, how should they do that?
Yeah, the best way is go to wellkeptwallet.com and click on the Start Here tab, and that will give them everything that they need to know. And then there's also an Ask Deacon tab if they have a question, they want to get in touch. I'd love to talk with them.
Great. So everyone, please do that. Go give Deacon a tweet or a like or any of those social network things that you like to do out there. Give him one of those. And thank you so much for being here and being a part of it. Listeners, if you enjoyed what you heard today, please, it helps a lot if you go into iTunes or Stitcher, or however you listen to podcasts, and give a 5-star rating if you think I've earned it. If not, please send me a note as well. Let me know, eric@personalprofitability.com. Tell me what you like, what you didn't, any questions, what I can do better, what I could keep doing that you like. Just reach out and say hello. Don't be shy. And I'm sure Deacon feels the same way for people on his site. So thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us today. I'm lifting up my beer, giving a cheers to Deacon for joining us, and all of you listeners, have a wonderful week. And until next time, stay profitable.
Thanks for listening to the Personal Profitability Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on iTunes or share it with a friend.